You know that feeling when you've been saving for months, like real months, disciplined months, skipping things, saying no, putting money away every single paycheck, and then you check the balance and it's barely moved, not because you spent it, not because you did anything wrong, but because at $4,000 or $6,000 or $8,000, the number just crawls. You put in 500, yet it goes to 4,500. You put in another 500. 4,900 and change, month after month of effort, and the account inches forward like it's stuck in mud. What's the point? At this rate, you'll be 80 before you have anything real. Other people your age already have 6 figures saved. You're sitting here celebrating $5,000 like it's a victory. It feels embarrassing. It feels pointless. It feels like the math is broken. I've been in that exact spiral, and here's what I wish someone had told me when I was staring at a balance that refused to move. The math isn't broken, you're just in the hardest part, yet the first $10,000 is more difficult to save than the next 100,000. That's not motivation, that's mathematics, and once you understand why, every month of slow progress starts to look completely different. My name is Jack, I'm Gen X, same as you, and I spend a lot of time studying what actually works financially for people like us in our 50s. Not the recycled advice designed for 25-year-olds, but real strategies for where we actually are right now. If that's useful to you, hit subscribe and tap the thumbs up. It helps more than you think. Quick reminder, I'm not a financial advisor and nothing in this video is financial advice. Now let's get into this. Before we get into the math, I need to talk about what makes this stretch uniquely brutal for our generation. A lot of us aren't saving our first 10,000 at 25 with a clean slate and decades ahead of us. We're doing it at 53 or 56 or 58. Some of us are rebuilding from scratch after a divorce settlement split everything down the middle, after a medical emergency drained the account, after a period of unemployment that burned through the cushion we spent years building. Starting over isn't the same as starting out. Starting over carries weight that a 25-year-old can't even imagine. And here's the part nobody talks about. Life doesn't stop rating the account just because you've decided to save. You put away $800 and the transmission goes out. You hit $3,000 and the roof starts leaking. You climb to $5,000 and your kid needs help with a deposit on an apartment. Every time the balance starts to build, something reaches in and pulls it back down. It's not that you can't save, it's that life keeps resetting the counter before you can get anywhere. And underneath all of that is something we don't say out loud. The quiet shame of building a starter emergency fund at an age when you're supposed to be planning retirement. Every article you read assumes you already have 50,000. Every calculator starts at 100,000. And here you are, trying to get to 10, yet feeling like you're 25 years behind on a timeline nobody adjusted for the life you actually lived. That shame is a liar, and the math is about to prove it. Let's look at why the first 10,000 genuinely is the hardest stretch. Because this isn't a feelings problem, it's a physics problem. Think about starting a fire. You can have the best logs in the world, dry, seasoned, perfectly stacked, but none of that matters until the kindling catches, and getting kindling to catch is miserable work. You're on your knees, blowing on tiny flames, shielding them from the wind, feeding them scraps of paper and twigs, and half the time they go out and you start over. That's the first 10,000. You're building the fire with almost no heat to work with. But once the kindling catches, once there's a real self-sustaining flame, adding logs is easy. The fire does most of the work. Each new log catches faster than the last. That's what happens after 10,000. Your money starts generating its own heat. Here are the numbers that make this concrete. If you save $500 a month into an account earning 7%, going from 0 to 10,000 takes about 18 to 19 months, almost 2 full years of consistent saving with very little compounding help. Your contributions are doing nearly all the work. The growth is practically invisible. But from 10,000 to 20,000, about 14 months. From 20 to 50,000, around 4 years. And from 50 to 100,000, roughly 4 more years. But now a significant chunk of the growth is coming from returns, not from your paycheck. The first 10,000 is almost entirely muscle. Every dollar is a dollar you personally carried. There's no tailwind, no compounding lifting you forward, just you, your paycheck, and the discipline to keep going when the number barely twitches. After that, compound growth starts picking up weight. By 50,000, your money is contributing meaningful growth on its own. By 100,000, it's doing serious work alongside you. And the gap between what you contribute and what it earns starts closing fast. The balance isn't broken. The physics of early saving is just brutal, and nobody warns you about it. They just show you charts that start at 50,000 and assume you already survived the hard part. So if the math explains why it's hard, why does it feel impossible? Why do so many Gen Xers start the climb to 10,000 and quit before they get there? Because of a psychological phenomenon that hits our generation harder than any other. Researchers call it effort-reward imbalance. The collapse of motivation that happens when sustained effort produces no visible result. A 2024 Bankrate Emergency Savings Report found that more than a third of Americans over 50 have less than $10,000 saved for emergencies. And among those who've tried and failed to build that cushion, the number one reported reason wasn't income. It was discouragement. The feeling that saving small amounts into an account that barely grows is pointless. That the effort doesn't match the outcome. That if this is what progress looks like, $482 of growth on a $5,000 balance, then why bother? And here's where this hits our generation in a way it doesn't hit younger people. We've been through decades of effort-reward imbalance already. We worked hard through recessions and got laid off. We invested carefully and watched the markets collapse. We did everything right and still ended up behind. So when we start saving at 55 and the account barely moves after 6 months, our brains don't see a slow start. They see a pattern, more effort, no reward. Again, that pattern recognition is a survival skill. But in this case, it's lying to you because the slow growth at the beginning isn't a sign that saving doesn't work. It's a sign that you're in the kindling phase. The fire hasn't caught yet, and quitting now, when you're closest to the flame taking hold, is the most expensive moment to stop. The progress is real. It's just invisible at this scale. And invisibility isn't absence. It's the quiet before the acceleration. But here's where it gets interesting. And this is the part that reframes the entire first 10,000. Most financial content talks about the first 10,000 in purely mathematical terms. Compound growth is slow at small balances, returns are minimal, your contributions do all the work, and all of that is true. But it completely misses the more important thing that happens at 10,000, something that has nothing to do with interest rates or market returns. Here's the part most people completely miss. The first 10,000 doesn't just change your balance, it changes your identity. Before 10,000, you're a person who's trying to save. After 10,000, you're a person who saves. That sounds like wordplay, but it's the most consequential shift in your entire financial life because behavior follows identity. Once you see yourself as someone who has built something real, who has proven with evidence that they can do this, every financial decision you make from that point forward is filtered through a different lens. You stop thinking of saving as something you're attempting and start thinking of it as something you do automatically, without debate. And this is why the next 100,000 feels easier than the first 10, not just because compound growth kicks in, because you kick in. You become someone who doesn't touch the savings, someone who increases the contribution without being told. Someone who checks the balance with curiosity instead of dread. The math helps, but the behavioral transformation is doing at least half the work. You don't save because you have money. You have money because you became a person who saves. And that transformation happens at 10,000. Think about what this means for Gen X specifically. If you're 55 and you've never had $10,000 sit untouched in an account, getting there isn't just a financial milestone. It's the moment your entire relationship with money rewrites itself. And that rewrite is what makes the journey from 10,000 to 100,000 feel like a completely different experience. Because it is. You're not the same person on the other side of it. The first 10,000 is the price of admission into a version of yourself that builds wealth. Everything after it is what that version of you creates. Let's make this real. 3 steps, all designed to get you through the kindling phase and into the flame. Step 1, and do this before anything else. Set a $10,000 milestone with a specific target date using backward math. Take 10,000, subtract whatever you currently have saved, and divide the gap by the number of months you want to give yourself. If you can save $500 a month, that's 20 months. If 300 is more realistic, that's about 33 months. Either way, you now have a date on a calendar. Not a vague goal floating in the future, but a specific month and year when you cross 10,000. Write that date down, but put it where you see it every morning. The difference between I'm trying to save and I'm hitting 10,000 by March is the difference between a wish and a plan, and plans have a dramatically higher survival rate than wishes, especially during the months when the balance barely moves and your brain is screaming at you to quit. The second thing, which most people never set up, create a savings firewall. This is a rule, not a suggestion. A rule that prevents you from withdrawing from this account for anything less than a genuine emergency. Define what an emergency is in advance before the temptation hits. A real emergency is a medical crisis, a job loss, or a home repair that makes your house uninhabitable. A real emergency is not a vacation, a car upgrade, a gift, or a bill you forgot about. Write your emergency definition down and tape it to the front of the folder where you keep your financial documents, or put it in the Notes app on your phone next to your account login. When the temptation comes, and it will, that written rule is the wall between your future and the present moment's urgency. Most people who fail to reach 10,000 don't fail because they can't save. They fail because they keep dipping. The firewall stops the dipping. Third, and this one is specific to our age, track your savings streak, not just your savings balance. Get a calendar, paper, phone, whatever works. Every month that you contribute something, anything, to this account, mark the month. Build a streak. Protect the streak. The streak matters more than the amount because the streak is what builds the identity. 3 months in a row, you're starting something. 6 months, you're proving something. 12 months, you're someone who saves. That's the transformation. And on the months when the balance barely moves, when the compound growth is invisible, when the voice in your head says this isn't working, you look at the streak. 9 months of consecutive saving, 12, 15. The streak is the evidence that the kindling is catching, the flame is coming, and you don't stop feeding a fire that's about to take. These aren't complicated financial strategies. These are behavioral anchors designed specifically for the hardest stretch of saving that exists. Get through this and the physics of money shifts permanently in your favor. Remember that feeling from the start, months of saving, months of discipline, and the balance barely moving. That quiet spiral of, what's the point? I lived in that spiral. I know exactly how heavy it gets around month 4, month 6. When the account sits at 6,000 and the finish line feels imaginary. Yeah, when every finance article assumes you're already past this part. When the shame of building a starter fund at 55 makes you want to close the browser and never look at it again. But here's what I know now. That slow, grinding, invisible stretch, that's not failure. That's the kindling catching. Every dollar you saved during that stretch was a dollar building a version of you that didn't exist before. A version that doesn't dip into savings. A version that increases the contribution without being asked. A version that checks the balance and sees progress where the old you saw nothing. The first 10,000 doesn't just change your account, it changes your operating system. And once that system is running, the next 100,000 isn't a grind. It's momentum. It's compound growth with behavioral change underneath it. 2 engines pulling in the same direction for the first time in your financial life. You don't need to be patient. You need to be stubborn for 18 months. That's it. 18 months of feeding the fire before it catches. 18 months between the version of you that's trying and the version of you that's built. The hardest dollar you'll ever save is the one that gets you to 10,000. Everything after that is a different game entirely. Quick reminder, I'm not a financial advisor, and nothing in this video is financial advice. These are patterns I've studied and lived through that consistently work for people in our specific situation. If this changed how you're feeling about where your savings are right now, drop a comment and tell me, where are you on the path to 10,000? I want to know. I read every single one. And if you want to see how the $50,000 rule can change every financial decision you make from here, that video is right here.